What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bourbon of the Week. My name's Chris. I'm going to be your host for today, and here's the deal. So far this year, we've drank a lot of good whiskey, so much so that everything's kind of in the same spot on my ranking sheet, so we had to pull out the big guns and try to get a bottle that we don't think we're going to like, and that's going to bring us to Blood Oath Pack number 9 here. Now, I just haven't liked any of these offerings in the past, so we're going to see if I like this one here. I did not buy this myself. Thank you to my brother-in-law, Dave, for this bottle right here. Let's pour this up. Let's talk about this bottle. We had a very good Bourbon Bomb of the Week coming to you. And again, Blood Oath Pack 9. If you like it, let me know in the comment section below. But everybody knows before we get started, time for the traditional sip. Cheers, y'all. I'm going to like it. So here's the deal. I've had Blood Oath Pack 7 and I believe a sample of 3 or 4. I'm not really sure which one it was. I didn't love either of them. And at that price point that we're going to talk about, I didn't really want to go out and hunt one of these, especially with the mixed reviews that 8 got. But I've heard 9 is pretty good and I'm not going to turn down an opportunity with my brother-in-law buying this bottle to try it out for a review. Now, Blood Oath was started in 2015. This is Pack 9. That's how we're in 2023. And it's always a blend of 3 different whiskeys, and then it's finished in something. This particular bottle is a blend of 16-year-old rye, 12-year-old rye, and then 7-year-old rye. And the way they word it, it makes me believe that only the 7-year-old rye is what's finished in the Oloroso sherry casks here. That being said, this is coming out of Lux Row Distillery, but this is not distilled by Lux Row, and we'll get into that a little bit more during the Bourbon Bomb of the Week. This is coming in at a whopping 98.6 proof, and we're going to get into that with drinkability right now. How much ethanol kick does this bottle actually have? Now, here's the thing. This is 3 rye bourbons, but we don't know the contents of the rye. Could be high rye, could be low rye, could be somewhere right in the middle. If I had to guess, there is a higher rye content mash bill in this, just because it seems like I'm getting that spiciness off of what I would get off a high rye. That being said, let's not confuse that with ethanol when it comes to drinkability, but I still have to say at 98.6 proof, this drink's just a tad hot for me. Now, being my first glass of whiskey for the night, I do want to give this a fair shot, so I am going to take a couple of sips. I just really thought maybe that Oloroso sherry would really calm this down when it came to the ethanol kick, as well as the age statement on this. I mean, it's not age stated, but they're saying 7, 12, and 16-year-old whiskey, so it's not like there's any real youthful whiskey in this. Now, I took a look on the bottle here real quick because I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing any information that the bottle might tell me that I couldn't find online. But there was nothing about how much of this is 16-year-old, how much of this is the 7-year-old Oloroso sherry, and how much of this is the 12-year-old. I assume that most of it is the 7-year-old mixed in with that 12 and 16-year-old, but again, who knows? So here's the thing about this glass when it comes to drinkability. It definitely hits you with the ethanol kick in the back of the throat, but it doesn't follow all the way down. It doesn't give you that Kentucky hug. So it's kind of weird. If I were to blind this, and that's usually how I like to do things, what would I put this at if I blinded it? I'd probably go over 100, maybe like 105, 107. I feel like I've had 107 proof whiskey that drinks a lot easier than this. But again, this is like a high rye. I'm thinking maybe a wheated or even like a Baker's that has that nuttiness, that sweetness that really balances out the ethanol kick. This doesn't really give me any of that, and I was kind of expecting it with that Oloroso sherry finish, more of those wines, those fruits to kind of balance out that ethanol, but it doesn't really do that for me. That being said, we give it an 8.0 if it drinks right at its proof. This drinking a little bit hot for me. We're going to drop it down a little bit from that 8.0 mark. I might even go like low 7s, high 6s for me, because like from 96.8 all the way up to 107, that's a big jump, especially in the whiskey world. If I would have said like 100, maybe we put it in the mid to high 7s. But for me on this, I got to go like low 7s easily. One more sip. I'm sorry, guys. I poured out one more glass as we move into taste on this, but I'm going to give it like a 7.14 when it comes to drinkability on this. Again, just a little bit hot for me. Was expecting something a little bit easier to drink at 98.6 proof, but a 7.14 is where we're going to put it when it comes to drinkability. Let's get into taste. So when I first sipped this for tonight's traditional sip, it was my first glass of whiskey in like 4 or 5 nights. It was my first time drinking Blood Oath Pack 9, and I thought, I don't really hate this, but I can't really pinpoint what I love about it either, and I feel like I'm still kind of back and forth, teeter-tottering between do I love it or do I just like it, and I feel like I'm probably going to fall somewhere in the middle. Here's what I'll tell you I'm picking up right away. Definitely that Oloroso Sherry influence. It's not overwhelming, but it's noticeable. And it's kind of a weird difference because most of the time when I get Oloroso Sherry, it's overwhelming. And normally when it's overwhelming, it'll help when it comes to drinkability. For this, it's not overwhelming. It's kind of subtle and I kind of like it here. Normally I'm like, I'm not a big wine guy. I don't really like this dried raisin, this grape, whatever's going on in this glass. I don't normally like it, but for this, it kind of seems to work a little bit better than it's worked in the past for me. Normally I'll count out Oloroso Sherry the second I see it, but for this one, it's kind of making me change my mind a little bit on if it can work or not when it comes to whiskey. And another thing about this glass that I normally don't enjoy, but it seems to be working for them here, is the subtlety when it comes to the dryness and tannin, just as much as the subtlety when it comes to that Oloroso Sherry. Two things that can normally take over a glass and really turn me off to a glass of whiskey, but for some reason, this glass of whiskey seems to be doing it better than any other glass that I've had before. Now, just because they're subtle in this glass doesn't mean I'm all of a sudden going to enjoy that flavor profile or tell you that this is my favorite whiskey on the market, but I will say it does this better than anybody else that I've seen do it for my particular palate. If you like Oloroso Sherry, if you like dryness, tannins, some chocolates, some age notes that I don't truly enjoy, you might like this glass a little bit more than me, but for me, let's get into one last sip and we'll give it a score when it comes to taste. Taste is so subjective that it's kind of tough, right? This glass of whiskey could be very, very good to you, and I would not blame you at all. I've had some glasses of whiskey where I'm like, if you like that, you're just wrong. You're 100% wrong, and there's no reason that that should taste good to you. This, if you came to me and you were like, hey, this is a great glass of whiskey, I want you to try it, I wouldn't say you're wrong because that's just what you like. But for me, it's still not my favorite. Oloroso Sherry, not my favorite. Older whiskey, not my favorite. Chocolate notes, age notes, a little bit of that dryness is just not my favorite. So for me, I'm not going to tell you that this is a bad bottle of whiskey. I'm just going to tell you it's not for me. So when it comes to taste, we're going to drop this, again, just because it's not bad, I'm going to say high sevens, like a 7.96 when it comes to taste on this. I'll pour up one more as we get into the bourbon bomb of the week, but let's talk about the price on this bottle. This bottle comes in at $130, and I just cannot see a market where $130 is a fair price for this bottle. Now, that's coming from somebody who doesn't really enjoy the taste and thinks it drinks a little bit hot. I understand that. There's definitely a cult following for this bottle, but I also understand that they only put out a limited supply for a reason, and it does sit on the shelves here in Pennsylvania for quite some time. Now, I've also been trying to use my resources to understand the market when it comes to a price of a bottle of bourbon. Now, I understand 16 years when it comes to a whiskey is going to cost you a little bit more money than a 4 or 5 year old whiskey. I understand an Oloroso Sherry finish is going to cost you more money. I understand rye costs more than corn, which is why bourbon is usually so cheap. I get all that, but I just don't understand how some whiskeys can do the same things as other whiskeys, whether they taste the same or not, and they can still charge a different price. I think that has to do, one, with supply and demand, and two, with the following that it has. This has both of those things going for it, which I think is why they put a $130 price tag on this. I just can't justify it with not loving the taste and also not loving the drinkability. Me personally, I'm going to give this, let's say like 6.87 when it comes to price on this. $130 just seems too much for me, and that's what I got to put it at, a 6.87. But hey, while I add these scores up, let's send it over to this week's Bourbon Bomb of the Week and learn a little bit more about the person who created this bottle, John Rempe. That's right, John Rempe, the person's name that you see on the front of every bottle, John E. Rempe, to be exact, is actually the person that started the Blood Oath Pact No. 1, and he's been continuing it to Pact No. 9 here, and he has over 20 years in the spirits and beverage industry, and it's important we mention the beverage industry as well. He actually started out in the soft beverage industry doing R&D and quality control before he was recruited by Luxco to basically do the same thing, quality control in their quality control lab. He worked in Luxco's quality control lab as well as R&D, where he created different liqueurs, different RTDs, which are ready to drink cocktails, different cocktails, and different recipes as well. Now, if you know anything about Luxco, they've acquired a lot of different brands over the years, but none of them were their own until 2015 when they decided to start Blood Oath, thanks to John E. Rempe, and that's what we've got 9 years later in 2023, Blood Oath Pact 9. Cheers. If you made it this far in the video, make sure you click that like and that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. This bottle came in at a 7.32. If you like this bottle right here, I'm not mad at you. I understand that some people like this flavor profile. It's just not for me. I don't know what it is about Oloroso Sherry with some older whiskey that just turns me off, but this particular glass does it better than anything else that I've tried in this realm of whiskey, so I gotta at least give it credit for that. But I do have to know in the comment section below, if you've had this bottle, what are you giving it for price, taste, drinkability out of 10, 2 decimal points out. But in the meantime, make sure you check me out on Instagram at Bourbon of the Week. Go click that follow button over there. Check out our Patreon page and our Discord, both those links in the description below. Please don't drink and drive. Always drink responsibly and stay healthy, stay happy. Stay drinking. Cheers, y'all. I mean, it's really not bad.